With Rockstar Games seemingly not updating Red Dead Online as often as we'd like, I decided to turn my attention back to the oftenly updated and popular Grand Theft Auto Online. But with this being released almost 10 years ago, how would I fare starting as an entirely new Ranked 1 character? I aim to find out. Welcome to the video. You're listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and today I'll be taking you on a bit of a journey from the moment I landed in the city of Los Santos to the days when I ran my own team taking scores. If you guys enjoy the video, you all know what to do, and with that being said, let's get into what we came here to see. Upon the character creation screen, I did have my previous avatar that I created for recording purposes, but I wanted to start fresh, and after I learned how to type delete correctly, he was gone. I spent a little time flicking through the options of my character, and it was super cool to see that in the heritage section, I could have previous protagonists from Rockstar Games titles as my father, such as Niko Bellic from GTA 4, Claude from GTA 3, and John Marston from Red Dead Redemption. After adjusting some facial features, adding a beard and a hairstyle, selecting his clothes, and altering my stats and giving myself a name, I smiled for the birdie and headed to my flight. The destination, the fast-moving city of Los Santos in the state of San Andreas. The opening scene was pretty entertaining. It introduced me to the activities of the title I could participate in, such as racing cars and playing tennis, all the while popping up information concerning reputation points and jobs. It wasn't long before I landed at the Los Santos International Airport. Greeted by the charismatic Lamar Davies, whom I'd apparently been speaking to for some time over on the Life Invader app, I was given a pistol and taken on a tour of the city. Whilst jamming to Ice Cube's What You Wanna Do, I was soon on my way to take part in a street race. Up to 8 players, including myself and Lamar, could enter, but only one other did, another rank 1 newbie just like myself. After selecting a vehicle type and colour, I was given my first hands-on experience of the streets of Los Santos, in a race that I didn't win. After this, Lamar informed us of a drug deal going down that he'd like us to interfere with and make ourselves some money, so both myself and my racing opponent headed in that direction. Taking down a few of the thugs and giving chase to an escapee in the car, it wasn't long before we had our hands on the merchandise, and we're heading to Lamar's contact and close friend Gerald to receive payment. For the job, I earned a little under 2,000 reputation points and $500. I didn't understand the economy of Los Santos just yet, so this could have been a lot or a little. Completing this opened up the clothing stores, to which Lamar insisted we needed to visit, and it was here that I was a little taken aback by the extortionate prices of some of the clothes. Some jeans were selling at almost $15,000, but luckily I found a pair I liked for around $500. The shirts were the same for the most part, but I found one that was free, which I liked. At this point, I noticed I had almost $1 million in my bank account. I had no idea where this came from and just assumed it was a gift of some sort from Rockstar Games, but I certainly wasn't complaining. Lamar called soon after the store for a chat and introduced me to another way we can make money, holding up the local stores. Instead of waiting for the clerk to unload the cash register, I decided to deal with him quickly and help myself instead. I got around $1,250 out of this, which wasn't bad considering it was a very quick robbery, but I also obtained a 3-star wanted level. After losing the cops relatively easy, I wanted to experiment a little with these stores. What would be different if I allowed the clerk to hand me the money, sparing his life in the process? I chose immediately to put this to the test. There was an intimidation meter at the bottom of the screen, which didn't seem to budge much when I was firing rounds next to the clerk, so was this something to do with the player's microphone? I wasn't sure. Either that, or this guy didn't frighten so easy. Handing me the cash in the bag, I got a little less than a first store robbery, but I don't think the intake mattered on whether I killed the clerk or not. One difference that I did notice, however, was the wanted meter. Because this wasn't a homicide, I only accrued a 2-star wanted level this time. I once again easily evaded the cops. Receiving a call from one Simeon Yetarian, I was prompted to go to Los Santos Customs, where I would install a tracking device on my newly acquired Bravado Buffalo and also grab some insurance. Doing this made this car my own personal vehicle. Receiving a text from Gerald, I was to head to Cyprus Flats for work. It was on my way there that I encountered a strange bug in the game, and then got my arse blown up. After being killed, I was visited by a vision of Chris Formage, leader of the Epsilon program, who informed me of the passive mode, albeit in a creepy way, which protected me from other players in the lobby. But this also meant I couldn't harm anyone outside of a job neither. Back in action, I continued on to Cyprus Flats for Gerald, once again getting blown sky high. This time, because my Bravado Buffalo was destroyed, I had to phone Moore's Mutual Insurance to make a claim and then pick it up. This was becoming a bit of a nuisance. The job at Cyprus Flats was a last team standing match, and after what seemed an eternity just to get the job going, but in reality was about 120 seconds, I made it into the lobby. This job could hold up to 8 players, but we only had a few. Everyone, including myself, were pretty low ranked, so that was something at least. Fair game. From this screen, I was able to select my team, place a wager on myself to win, choose my winning toast, and purchase some heavy armour. All in all, from the moment I stepped into the triggering circle to the time I finally got into the action, took around 3 minutes. This seemed excessively long, but maybe it was just me being impatient. After getting the winning kill, ranking up, earning some cash, and flipping the bird, it was time to get back to the street of Los Santos. I received a couple of calls from some contacts telling me to purchase particular properties to begin specific work, but as I was still just starting out, I wanted to find my feet first. The amount of information thrown at me in the early stages of the game was a little overwhelming. I felt by the time I'd be experienced enough to take on these larger jobs, I'd have forgotten which contacts did which. Now that I'd earned a little money, I wanted to treat myself to a tattoo, but once again, similar to the clothing purchases, the prices were absurd, so I chose against this. Knowing I may need at some point health items, I visited a local store to purchase and was happy to see that the prices were realistic, finally. And of course, I held the guy up. This is Grand Theft Auto. I received a text from the downtown cab company offering some work, and I was definitely interested, but for now, after this long first day, I wanted some R&R at the local casino. After the introductory scene, where I was once again prompted with purchasing property, I had a little fun spinning the prize wheel, playing some slots, trying my hand at poker, and finally some roulette. I didn't win. After finishing up in the casino, I sat in my Bravado Buffalo outside, and realising that I didn't have a home at this point, I browsed through some property listings. Once again, I was blown up and had to claim my vehicle back. I wanted to see just how much money I'd make as a cab driver, so I headed to the local cab company and became an employee. I performed a couple of jobs which took me across the state of San Andreas, so I got to explore a little, but the money wasn't great. It seemed that the real way to make decent money in this town was criminality, so back to that I went. Once again, getting in contact with Lamar, he invited me to come see him at Benny's Original Motorworks. After a lengthy but entertaining conversation, I began what would become a series of jobs for Lamar, beginning with this first one, community outreach. Myself and 3 others were to disguise ourselves as either the Ballers or Vargos gangs and stir up a hornet's nest between the two by performing drive-bys. To be fair, the player I was paired with did most of the work. I had to do little more than drive. Eventually, the entire mission ended in a large shootout where we took down members from both factions before heading back to Lamar. This time, the money was much better, bringing in around 15k. Unfortunately, following this, the game bugged out for a second time, forcing me to find a new session. When back in, I thought about how useful during the drive-bys the submachine guns were, so during a little trip to ammunition, I geared up on some weaponry and even treated myself to some new clothes. Although I couldn't remember the details exactly, I knew that I had to own a particular type of property and be a certain rank before I strung together the famous online heist missions, but what I could do for now was help somebody else in theirs. So using the quick join option on my phone, I soon found myself with a few others on our way to steal an aircraft from the Vargos. Although the drive was a good distance, I hopped in somebody else's car as a passenger, which I thought was a pretty cool option. Even though, during a firefight at the Mackenzie airfield, the team failed for the first round, the second time we were successful in both retrieving and delivering the plane. For this, I ranked up to level 6 and earned a decent $22,000. Inspired by all this, I thought I'd get a head start on my own heists by purchasing a property, but unfortunately I was told I'd have to wait for a call from Simeon Yetarian, so for now it was back to work. This time I revisited Lamar's contact, Gerald, who once again put myself and 3 others onto a deal going down, wanting us to intervene. I'm not sure what happened to the rest of my team, but before I even got into any action, I was left to do the entire thing by myself, which wasn't easy. Luckily, before this, I'd stocked up on some new weaponry and supplies before attempting this, otherwise, alone, with nothing but a pistol, I wouldn't have stood a chance. The fight in the search for the product was tough, and I had to be tactical. Unfortunately, what Gerald wanted was not at this location, so I was pushed to search elsewhere. The whole thing was an ambush. The cops knew all about it. Gerald needed me to destroy the evidence, so there was no trail leading back to him. So after battling the city's finest and blowing up some vans, eventually it was mission successful. This would have been much easier with my team, and the payout of $18,000 hardly seemed worth all the effort I'd put in. Finally, as I reached rank 7, the call I'd been waiting for from Simeon Yetarian came. Now I could purchase the property I needed to perform my own heists. A little searching informed me that the apartment I needed had to be a high-end one, and although most of them were priced in at over $1 million, there was one that was going dirt cheap in comparison, at Del Perro Heights for $200,000. In the meantime, I'd acquired from some unsuspecting pedestrian a car I loved and used often in a single-player game, the Sabre Turbo. Visiting my new apartment, I enjoyed a glass of wine before exploring the rest of the place, where I'd find a walk-in wardrobe, took a shower, and visited the not-yet-active Heist planning room. Still, I needed to wait for an invitation from Lester Crest before I could begin these, so once again I went back to work. Continuing work for Lamar Davies alongside another player, I met up with the man at the Del Perro Pier, where he needed us to transport a couple of lowrider vehicles while staying out of the sightlines of the local law. Unfortunately, my partner in crime was caught almost immediately, but the second time round in this difficult mission, we both managed to deliver the cars where they needed to go. The deal was an ambush. The rivaling ballers knew all about it, so once again, I found myself in a gunfight. For all the hassle that this mission was, the measly $5,000 didn't seem worth it, but what's done is done, I suppose. As I entered rank 8, the call from Lester finally came, where he asked me to go and speak with him at his warehouse off the freeway. This short scene was the beginning of the heists, but I'd still have to wait for him to get in touch once more before it began. I didn't have to wait long. Back at my heist planning room, it allowed me to begin the first part, and although it required me to be a rank 12, there didn't seem to be a problem. Bringing a second person in, Lester gave me the details. We were to hit the Fleischer Bank franchise. After scoping the place out, planning, and later stealing an armoured Kuruma vehicle, we were good to go. Heading there, I hacked into the bank security system before entering. With my partner dealing with the customers and bank staff, I headed to the safety deposit box in the back. I'll admit, it took me a minute to figure out the drill, but I got there in the end. During the escape, the driver somehow managed to miss our helicopter ride with Eddie Tow, but eventually we pulled it off. After dropping the contents back off at Lester's, the mission was completed, and with my 55% cut from the heist, I happily walked away with a little over $110,000. With this newfound wealth, it was time to treat myself a little. I bought myself a sharp suit and got a fresh haircut and a beard trim, but what I really wanted to spend the money on was my Sabre Turbo, so off to Benny's I went. Giving it a new paint job, new rims, customising both the interiors and exteriors, all the while souping up the engine. Aside from the hefty $800,000 cost, I was happy with my new ride. To top it off, I finished my day with a round of golf. Although I enjoyed my time in Los Santos, it definitely had its ups and downs. Let's take a look at some of them by starting with the positives. The missions are entertaining, and the cutscenes with Lamar were too. The game is action-packed and full of things to do. Seems like there's an activity on every corner. The customization is on point. There are hundreds upon hundreds of clothing options, weapon and car customizations. The heists are definitely my favourite part, including the preparation work. It was fun building up to the final job. I really enjoyed the casino, but I felt that I could have had more than 3 games at the table section. Now the not so good stuff. I understand that this is a Grand Theft Auto game, but it was a pain in the arse starting out with nothing but a pistol and being taken down by players of much higher ranking from their flying motorcycles with rockets. It seemed an unfair advantage in favour of more seasoned players, so the lobby matchmaking could use some work. I wouldn't have minded so much, but when my personal vehicle was destroyed, I'd have to travel to a specific location just to retrieve it, unless there's a way to have it brought to me that I possibly missed. Players leaving lobbies during missions made things more difficult, and if this happened during a heist, it would cancel the entire job no matter how far into a particular portion I was. This happened a few times. The price of clothing and weaponry is extortionate, and given that you could waste hundreds of rounds of ammunition and feel forced to keep purchasing body armour in missions, the payout is a little ridiculous. You'd have to partake in 3 or 4 missions sometimes just to grab yourself a pair of jeans. All in all, it's an enjoyable game, but I can see why people choose to avoid it at times. If you're just starting out and don't have much experience, you could lose interest quite quickly after being taken down so many times by much larger ranked players. This is an issue that could easily be fixed. The extensive loading screen times didn't help neither. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed. You've been listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and if you did, you all know what to do. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.